Okay, picture the American Southwest. You're walking through these vast, wide-open deserts. The sun is just beating down, and the land around you, it looks completely empty.
Silent, endless. It's this harsh, sun-baked, totally unforgiving landscape. But then, you look up, and carved right into the towering walls of a massive canyon, you see something that just defies belief: a city. Now, we're not talking skyscrapers or highways here, and there's definitely no electricity. Instead, you're looking at hundreds of interconnected rooms, massive stone structures, and entire complex communities built directly into the sheer cliff faces.
Which immediately begs the question, right? Who built cities in these cliffs? How on earth did these communities survive in what is literally one of the harshest environments in North America? A place where finding water can mean the difference between life and death? And honestly, the most captivating mystery of the whole shebang: why did these bustling settlements eventually just go silent?
Well, to figure that out, we've got to look back over 1,000 years to a group known as the Ancestral Puebloans. Now, they didn't just magically appear in these canyons overnight. Their incredible cities were the payoff of centuries of intense adaptation. We're talking about generations of folks figuring out over hundreds of years how to survive, how to farm, how to build, and crucially, how to live together in a highly organized way.
It's a really staggering contrast between this brutal environment and sheer human ingenuity. Nature here did not pull any punches. Rain was totally unpredictable, and droughts could literally last for years. Just traveling to find water was a massive risk. But somehow, through centuries of adaptation, by the first millennium CE, these communities were thriving. They were cultivating crops like maize, beans, and squash. They were crafting beautiful pottery and putting down roots in permanent settlements. They didn't just survive the desert, they totally learned to work with it.
Let's dive into Part 1, the rise of Chaco Canyon. So almost 1,000 years ago, this remote, rocky landscape of sandstone and open skies became the beating heart of a really powerful cultural world. And right at the center of it stood Pueblo Bonito. Its massive, multi-story stone walls looked like they practically grew naturally out of the canyon floor. But they were painstakingly built, layer by layer, stone by stone. It had enough room for hundreds of interconnected spaces, and it featured these enormous circular rooms called kivas. These weren't just places to crash for the night, they were massive hubs for gathering, deep ceremonial practices, and just everyday community life.
But you gotta wonder, why build something so enormous in such a punishing spot? Well, archaeologists have actually uncovered these incredibly straight roads connecting way out settlements directly to Chaco. It was a massive trade network. The folks at Chaco were bringing in pottery, turquoise, shells, and, get this, live macaws all the way from Central America. That is thousands of miles away. So Chaco was absolutely not isolated. It was a deeply connected hub where ideas, people, and goods were constantly on the move.
But even with all those clues, we still don't know exactly how this society ran things. Was Chaco a strict political center laying down the law? Was it a religious hub for spiritual leaders? Or maybe a pilgrimage site for distant travelers? The wild thing is, the more evidence we dig out of the earth, the more questions we end up with. The archaeology gives us some pretty great hints, but it definitely holds back the final answers, making Chaco one of the absolute greatest puzzles of ancient America.
Moving on to Part 2, the climate shift.
Okay, so the thriving world of Chaco Canyon eventually ran into a massive existential threat. After generations of adapting so beautifully to their surroundings, the early 1200s hit them with severe, relentless droughts. By the mid-1200s, water became terrifyingly scarce, which obviously meant growing food was a total gamble. And you just can't support giant trade hubs and huge populations without reliable farming. So as a result, by the late 1200s, a lot of major settlements in the Four Corners region had to be completely abandoned or significantly transformed.
And this brings us to a really crucial twist in the story. There's this super common myth that they were some kind of lost civilization that just vanished due to a sudden catastrophe. But the reality? They were an incredibly resilient group of people who simply did what they had always done. They adapted, they migrated, they reorganized, and they are absolutely still around today. Their descendants live all across the Southwest, keeping those rich cultural traditions alive in modern Pueblo communities. They didn't vanish at all, they evolved.
Which leads us to Part 3, the Mesa Verde shift.
Way up high above the valleys of what is now Colorado, they adapted to their changing world by building something truly jaw-dropping, a community protected by the natural architecture of the canyon itself.
Just imagine standing there. You've got this towering wall of sandstone arching right over your head, and a vast landscape dropping away below you. These cliff dwellings look like natural fortresses, totally decked out with stone rooms and kivas. But they weren't just hiding up there. They were actively farming the land up top and managing resources across the entire area.
But here's the thing. The ancient Southwest was never static. These communities were constantly dealing with the cycle of shifting climates, totally unpredictable water, population pressures, and changing social conditions. It was basically a nonstop engine of environmental pressure and brilliant human adaptation.
And when archaeologists actually dig into the ruins, they don't find the dramatic stuff Hollywood movies love to suggest. There was no one giant catastrophic event. There's zero evidence of some massive enemy army suddenly burning the whole place to the ground. Instead, the real story is way more gradual and complex. People just relocated. Trade networks shifted. Settlements that used to be these loud, vibrant centers of life just slowly over time grew quiet.
Part 4. Movement, not extinction.
This actually brings up a huge, fundamental realization about human history. A civilization doesn't always end in fire and destruction. Sometimes it just ends with movement. Those massive stone walls stayed behind in those quiet canyons. The beautifully crafted kivas were left empty. But the people, they didn't die out. They just packed up and moved on, carrying their profound knowledge, their stories, and their culture to brand new places. Today we walk through these ruins trying to piece together what happened. But the true legacy isn't really in the stones. It's in the ongoing journey of the people themselves.
But you know, the Ancestral Puebloans were just one piece of a much larger, continent-wide puzzle. Because while these incredible stone cities were evolving out west, what was rising in the east? At the exact same time, totally different societies were transforming entirely different landscapes. They were building massive geometric monuments and huge earthworks that literally challenge everything we thought we knew about ancient America.
A whole new civilization was rising up in the eastern woodlands, and its influence would spread for hundreds of miles, the Mississippian culture, centered right at the staggering monumental city of Cahokia. I mean, how did they manage to build some of the largest earthen monuments in human history without using a single stone? It's mind-blowing. And honestly, it leaves us with one final, kind of haunting thought. If the greatest stone cities of the West could eventually empty out into the desert, are our own modern cities really as permanent as we like to think? Or are we too just one major climate shift away from a great migration?